Radiant and Resilient is about mindset and faith to break paradigms and overcome challenges in our life. Because when the mind, body, and spirit are aligned, we literally radiate from the inside out. I'm Kay Vasquez. Let's dive in. If you've been following along my journey so far since I've released Radiant and Resilient, you already know that I started the podcast in the middle of my pregnancy as I was transitioning from the first into the second trimester, because the first trimester brought up so much mentally, emotionally, spiritually for me. I had the intention of starting this podcast this year, but didn't realize the impact the first trimester would have. And so if you haven't been following my journey, you're just tuning in, I highly recommend go back and listen to the episode where I dive into the challenges that I overcame in the first trimester. So I dive into that journey, but I want to continue in this episode my journey because I think it's so important as ambitious women, whether you are in business or not, you're working for someone, but you're just an ambitious woman, have big goals and dreams to achieve, and are here to make an impact. I think it's important that we talk about our journey in pregnancy, because I've had so many conversations with other ambitious women, and almost every one of them that I talked to just pushed through, kept going, kept doing, kept, trying to achieve more in their pregnancy. And what I learned was that they had their own struggles. They had their own challenges, mentally, emotionally, physically. But a lot of us aren't aware that we go through these things. So I am here to openly share about my journey in pregnancy. And I hear every pregnancy is different. This is my first pregnancy, but I want to share, I want to have more conversations about this because I think it's so important, because one, we're not alone. There are other women who go through something very, very similar. And so what I come to realize is that pregnancy is not just a physical journey where the body, the hormones, everything's changing, but it's mental, emotional, spiritual journey as well. And instead of resisting, because a lot of stuff's going to come up, a lot of limiting beliefs, a lot of fears as the body's changing, as you're stepping into a new role, either as a mom as a first time or a mom of now multiple kids. Our life is constantly changing. And so a lot's going to be coming up during this time. And there's going to be things we're not able to show up for and do like we were before pregnancy. I can definitely attest to that. So as a high achiever, it's like I'm used to creating, I'm used to just go, 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 but also slowing down. I've been better about that, because this journey has taught me so much that I can't constantly be on the go. It's taught me with having migraines and different things that have happened in my marriage and in the business. Those challenges have caused me to slow down, to tune in, and recognize when I need to rest, recognize when I need to restore, when something's out of alignment physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, especially with my relationship with God. And so I'm sharing this because as I'm coming out of a faith-based retreat for female entrepreneurs, I had such an incredible breakthrough, and I want to share that breakthrough with you in this episode, because I realized that before I got pregnant in the year 2023, when my business went into debt because of the decisions I made investing in many, many masterminds, and I realized that I made that decision out of FOMO, fear of missing out. I thought that these masterminds and these mentors, the programs I invested in, was going to reveal to me the key to success. Because I initially started my own functional medicine practice to really help people heal, but I wanted to figure out, how do I get myself out there so I can actually help more people? And so I jumped into these masterminds to learn about the strategies to get myself out there so people know that I'm here to help them to heal. The problem was that I lost sight of my purpose, my mission of helping people to heal, to now focusing on the strategies and focusing on what do I need to do to grow, to be successful. And because of that, I was so focused on control, focused on trying to control the outcomes, everything that was happening in the business, focused on lack when something wasn't going right and going the way I expected and not getting in enough clients. And now I'm not getting in enough income to support the business. It really shifted my focus. And so looking back, I am so grateful for the debt, for the business going into debt, to the point that my credit cards maxed out. I couldn't even use them anymore. So I couldn't even invest in more mentors and masterminds and programs, because in that moment, I really surrendered myself and humbled myself before God, because I just felt so defeated. I felt so hopeless. I didn't know what to do. And during that time, I felt God put on my heart to jump into a small group, which I did. It was a program called Freedom, which is hosted by my church. And when I went through Freedom, what God revealed to me was that I had not fully surrendered the business to Him. And it was such an eye-opening experience and breakthrough. And so I really slowed down. Slowed down. I focused on surrendering what was not in my control to Him, surrendering different things in the business, and seeking His kingdom first, because I realized I was seeking my will, not His. And so I really started to shift things, started to focus on building and cultivating that relationship with Him, because I realized I was trying to do it all. I was trying to do it all. I was trying to control it all. I was doing it all for my glory, not His. So the year 2023, I focused on surrendering control, especially the business. And God showed up in such a beautiful way. Like I wasn't showing up consistently on social media. I wasn't posting that often, yet clients were coming in. And it just shows just like the power and authority that God has. When we surrender and humble ourselves before Him, He's going to show up in such a beautiful way, in a way that only He can do, in a supernatural way. It made me realize, like, yeah, I can focus on the strategies all day, but if it's forced, if it's not in alignment with who I am, it's actually going to block the abundance, that it's going to block God from providing me with the resources, providing me with the clients, providing me with all the blessings that He wants to give me. So I focused on surrendering the business. However, I had not focused on surrendering every area of my life. I was still trying to control an area, which was pregnancy, trying to prevent pregnancy. So again, like I said, if you haven't listened to the first couple of episodes of this podcast, go back and listen, and I dive into that journey. And so going into this retreat, I needed it, because one morning we did a business devotional. And in that business devotional, we got the opportunity to dedicate our business to God. And it was something that I had not done yet. And it was such a beautiful exercise, beautiful practice. But before we dedicated the business to God, we took a moment to just, speak to God and listen to God, to hear what He wanted to reveal to us. And when He spoke to me, He shared that I had not fully surrendered, and that the pregnancy was an opportunity to really humble myself before Him, surrender every area of my life. Because I realized, even though I started to surrender the business, I got back into wanting to control different things, focus on the strategies, and am I doing it right? And, am I showing up enough, and doing all these things, because my goal was to get the business in a better place so I can have a maternity leave, and I didn't have to think about the business. But I was trying to do it from force, trying to control things, which was starting to block things again energetically in my business. And it was creating some stress and tension within me. And I realized I was disconnected from the peace that I worked so hard to achieve last year when I surrendered, when I fully been surrendering to God. I was reconnected with that peace again, but I became disconnected because I started to shift my focus. Instead of seeking God's kingdom, His will, focusing on my will again. And so what He revealed to me was that this pregnancy was another opportunity to just fully surrender everything to God, and realize like one of the common themes was not just surrender, but check back in and tune into what is my goal, what is my purpose, what is my mission? Because again, I had lost sight of that. And I realized like I'm here to do God's will, to build God's kingdom, not my will, not to build my kingdom, right? And I'm here to serve from a place of love, to help people reconnect back to that peace that only comes from within, that comes from God. And there's so many different ways we can do that. And it's just recognizing, where are we out of alignment with ourselves, with God? What are the mental, emotional pieces, the things that is blocking us from receiving that peace, from experiencing that peace, from embodying that peace? And that is my mission. That is my purpose. That is what God has put on my heart and called me to do. But because of all the fears that came up, feeling like my life is out of control, because I realized I had put a condition on myself. A few weeks before the retreat, I had put a condition on myself. I said that I cannot start a family until the business gets to a certain point, or when the business is successful, then I can start a family. And I realized how much that condition I put on myself was affecting me physically, mentally, emotionally, put me in that state of fear and overwhelm and anxiety, disconnected me from that peace. And once I was aware of the condition I put on myself, I was like, oh my goodness, that's why it was so hard to surrender into the pregnancy, because I did want to get pregnant last year, but I was saying, oh, no, it's not the right time, trying to control. And God was reminding me that He is in control, not me. And the desire of my heart was to get pregnant. And He wants to bless us with a beautiful little soul. And the time is now. It's never going to be perfect time. I had to really fully surrender. And what was keeping me from surrendering was just really fully trusting God, having faith and belief that it's all going to work out because God's on my side. And yes, I still have to show up and do my part, but I also need to slow down and tune in to and listen to what God wants me to do, not what I think I should do, what the world wants me to do. So it was a beautiful lesson, a beautiful breakthrough that came through to me, because one of the hosts of the retreat, we had a one-on-one conversation, and she said, when I first saw you at this retreat, because she had never seen me in person, we just like texted a couple months ago because I had some questions about the retreat. So we never connected in person. And for the first time, she said when she saw me in person at the retreat, she could see the peace within me. And when she said that, this was before the morning devotional, before I had the breakthrough, I knew that God was speaking through her. God was speaking through her to remind me of who I am and what I'm here to do. And when she said that, I felt so seen. I felt so loved. I felt so supported in that moment. That's when I remembered. And then going into the devotional the next morning, and God reminding me I haven't fully surrendered. And this pregnancy was a journey that I'm supposed to go on to fully surrender, because the speakers at the event share their stories of when they fully surrendered their business to God. It allowed God to move in such a beautiful way, where they not only were able to bless so many people in their life through their business, but God showed up and blessed them because of their obedience, because of their service, because they were focused on building His kingdom, not theirs. And it was such an inspiration to me to hear that, because again, I've been in a lot of masterminds, worked with a lot of mentors, but the thing that was missing was putting God first. God was missing out of the whole equation. And it made me realize that's why focusing on just the strategies just didn't feel right, because I wasn't coming to God and asking God, how do you want me to show up? How do you want me to build your kingdom? What is the next step? How do you want me to serve? How do you want me to love? And I realized one powerful question that came through to me is, how can I glorify God today? How can I glorify God? Because it's not about me. It's not about glorifying me and I did it. No, it's about God. God did it. I remember seeing a post on Instagram the other day, which said something along the lines of like, this is a God did it kind of year, or I want this year to be a God did it year. And I'm like, wow, why stop at a year? Why can't we live a God did it kind of life? And that's what I want to embody. Like, God did this. So how can I glorify God today in my marriage, in my health, in my relationships, in my business, in every area of my life? How can I glorify God? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to claim the glory. I want to give God the glory. And so that was such a beautiful takeaway from the retreat, but also one of the biggest lessons that I learned in the second trimester. Because even though I physically, mentally, emotionally, I felt better, I felt myself starting to drift back into the state of fog. And I felt like the pregnancy brain was starting to kick in a little bit. But it was because I had gone into fear. And when we go into fear, it affects our brain. It can make the pregnancy brain worse. But if we can recognize it, make the shifts, it restores our energy, it restores our focus. So I wanted to share that with you because I want to be open, I want to be raw, I want to be vulnerable, because I know there's so many other ambitious women out there, and I don't want you to lose sight of what's truly important in our life, in our business, in our health, in our marriage. And that's the big key takeaway, because it's not just in business, it's every area of our life. Where are we not fully surrendered? Whatever challenge we're going through in whatever area of our life, how can we surrender that to God? How can we glorify God? If anything, the biggest takeaway was that I'm not here to build my kingdom. I'm here to build God's kingdom by stepping into my purpose and mission to help people to reconnect back to peace and love, which is already within them, that comes from God. And through my business, that's how we're going to build his kingdom. How we're going to create this community of people that are reconnected back to that peace and love. Because when we're connected to that peace and love, when the mind, body, and spirit is aligned, we literally radiate from the inside. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, because we have this radiant light that is within us, that radiant light that comes from God. And it shines through when we are aligned, when our mind, body, and spirit is aligned. That's what makes us radiant. But when we are not connected to who we are, who God created us to be, it dims our light. When we're disconnected from our purpose, when we're disconnected from that peace, when we're disconnected from that love, it dims our light. In the Bible, we're here to be the light for others, and we can't be that light if we're dimming our own light, right? It requires a lot of faith, a lot of courage to be bold, to embrace who God created us to be, because the world is going to come at us and tell us who we should be, what we should do. And that's because we're spiritual beings having a spiritual experience, but it's in a physical body in a physical realm. I want to dive more into this in the next episode. So definitely stay tuned, because I think it's important, reconnecting us back, important to understand how we can be more radiant and resilient, and how that shifted things for me. But until then, I'd love to know, what are your takeaways from this episode? Reach out to me on Instagram at the Kate Vasquez.